Hey guys, Nick Showman from Showtime Strength. Today I want to talk about some, I think, misconceptions about deadlifting. I think a lot of people don't understand the point of doing elevated deadlifts or, weight elevated or lifter elevated, also known as deficit deadlifts. So let's look at the differences. So when we talk about elevated deadlifts, a lot of times people think that if the bar is elevated, that means they can move more weight because it's a shorter range of motion. But I think what people fail to realize, a lot of people, when the weight is elevated, it changes the leverages. So for probably half the lifters, it's going to actually result in a lower weight being used. The first time I went up to Westside, Lou had me doing a Pen 3 deadlift, and I was almost 100 pounds off of my best deadlift from the floor. And I couldn't figure it out. I thought I'd be 100 pounds over that weight because it's 4 or 5 inches of a shorter motion. And I asked Lou, I was like, what is going on? And he said, you don't understand strength yet. And it took me a long time to figure out what he meant. But if you're elevating, you're taking your legs out of the motion. And for somebody that's a little bit taller like me, you can develop a lot of leg drive off the beginning of the lift. The walkout was always more difficult for me than the start of the motion. Usually your shorter guys, your taller guys, this will be the case. I saw the same thing with Chris Spiegel. He deadlifted 915 raw as a super heavyweight lifter, and I saw him struggle with somewhere in the 8s on a pen deadlift. He got his block pull up to 900 in time. But so let's talk about elevated deadlifts. I break them down into 2 types of pulls. So pin pulls and then block or mat pull. All right. And there's a difference in a pin pull and a block pull or a mat pull with weight on mats. So a pin pull, you're generally going to use a power bar, not a deadlift bar. So with that alone, you're not getting the flex or the whip out of the bar. But with the pin pull also, so pin pulls, you're going 1, 2, 3. Sometimes you might do a pin 4, pin 5 as an accessory movement. It's just a little bit higher. But there's no stretch reflex in a pin pull. All right. Pin pull is going to last a little bit longer. It's going to take a little bit longer to break off the pin. So the pin pull is really good for teaching the lifter to strain. Anybody competing at a higher level, learning to think while straining is a critical key in being successful. So your pin pulls using a power bar, no stretch reflex, you can do these either conventional or sumo. Generally, you want to do them conventional, taking your feet out wider in a sumo position. In an elevated deadlift like that doesn't do a whole lot. We would do them sometimes as an accessory movement, so bumping your reps up into the 5 to 10 range. So again, most of these were conventional. Block mat pull, so if you're talking about mats, anywhere from 1.5 to 3, 4-inch mats. All right. Same thing with block. And again, you're using a deadlift bar, and you're able to actually get the stretch reflex out of your lower body. You can actually set up into the bar, unlike the pin pull. Block. Now let's talk about accommodating resistance. And and again, the block pulls you can do sumo or conventional. What we would do sometimes, find which one you're strong at and then do the opposite. Especially if you're not getting ready for a competition, that's a great way to build up your weak areas. So if I wasn't getting ready for a competition, I would do a lot of my elevated pulls, just conventional, raw conventional. And then as I got closer to meets, I'd take my feet back out into my sumo stance, put my briefs back on, and what I noticed was my hips would feel better and they'd feel stronger. So they wouldn't feel as beat up, and then by the time I get to the meet, I got stronger hips. Not only the muscles are stronger, but also they're just not beat up from training in a wide stance all year. So accommodating resistance with these, so why would you use accommodating resistance? accommodating resistance is to help develop acceleration. So if you're on the pins or on the mat, right? So you have the weights on the mat, it's going to be a shorter motion. Then you add bands or chain. All right, and now with that, with a band or chain, you're going to use less bar weight. So higher acceleration. So this is where you get into heavier top end weights, all right, but also developing the speed. The deadlift is a concentric only lift, meaning there's no eccentric, there's no lowering in it. All right, so if you can develop the speed, that's going to be a huge bonus. I'd say about half your mat pulls should be with bands and then about half with straight weight. And why is that? Because what you'll notice if you pull against bands a lot, you can actually start cheating the bands. And if you get out of position, you can lean into the bands and they'll sort of hold you in place. So always just keep that in mind. And you want to feel that weight at the top and the bottom. All right, so a lot of times what you'll notice is people using heavy band tensions on their pulls, but they don't have the power from the start position to carry through. So they got the speed, they just don't have the strength to go with it. Then on a pin pulls, we never really use chains on deadlifts, on any of the deadlift variations. It's sort of a pain in the ass to set up. So if we did accommodating resistance, it was generally band tension. So pin pulls, quad, mini, monster, and light band. On the mat pulls, double mini, double monster, and then a draped light band. And sometimes we do a combination of those. It all depends on your strength level and what you're trying to achieve. All right, so with the pin pull, quadded, so you're double the band, running around the power rack, mini band or monster band or light band. So how do you determine what is actually working? So you develop your numbers on pin 1, 2, 3, pin 1, 2, 3 with quadded mini, pin 1, 2, 3 with monster bands, pin 1, 2, 3 with light band. All right, so then in the middle, you're gonna have your competition deadlift. And then over here, mat or block pull, whatever one you have access to. And same thing, then you can go find the weight from a mat, you know, 1.5 inch mat, 2.5 inch mat, 3 inch mat, whatever mat size you're using, find 2 or 3 different numbers. And then same thing, find your number with the mini, with the monster, with the light. And if you want to get even more in depth, you can even go conventional or sumo. And what you're trying to find is what is the discrepancy, all right? Is your competition deadlift higher or lower than your pin pulls? Is your competition deadlift higher or lower than your pull through mats? All right, how much band tension are you generating? Don't, on the deadlift with many bands, if you have a deadlift platform similar to the one that we had at Westside, or I think Rogue sells it now, double mini bands is like 200 pounds at the top. You don't have to measure it, just call that your number. And what I noticed is most of the time, if people pulled like 500 plus double mini bands, about 100 pounds off, they could pull 600 off the ground. That happened almost every time. It happened with me, and I saw it with probably 20 to 25 other people. Same thing, 600 plus 200 pounds in band was generally a 700 pound deadlifter. Saw that one probably another 20 times. All right, so these are all just tools. You find all these numbers, right, and you assess what they mean. Again, off the pins, Off the pins, going to be a little bit longer strain, and that's good. Off the mats, you're getting a little more flex out of the bar. Then also find your numbers on the deficit deadlift. And we did some extreme deficits. Unless you're a very experienced lifter, I probably wouldn't do the extreme deficits. Try a 1 inch, a 2 inch deficit, 3 inch, maybe push to 4 if you got some training experience. And again, those can be done, deficits can be done conventional or sumo. I don't recommend most people using bands on a deficit pull. It can help, but I don't know if the risk to reward is worth it. Reason being, it's because of the time under tension. The length of the motion's longer, so your time under tension is going to be longer, but also adding the band tension, your chances of tearing a bicep or a hamstring or tweaking your glute are higher. I've seen it happen. I've experienced it, just slight tweaks here and there in hamstrings and glutes doing the exercises. It's just one of those things that it sounds good in theory, probably not good in application. So if you're going to go from a deficit, I'd say straight weight's going to be your best bet. All right, and you're going to get more feel for weight at the bottom, which is going to carry over when you go from your deficit, go to the floor and pull. All right, if you guys have any questions about deadlift or how to implement deadlift into your training, how to build it, let me know.